Hi folks, welcome back. We're halfway through an amazing conversation with Rod and Ruthie Gilbert, so if you're joining us here, I suggest you go back to part 1. Just click the link below this video. We've already covered a lot of ground, from their roots to their remarkable meeting and the life of a family in mission together, including tragedy and triumph. What a journey. And there's still more. Enjoy. Right, well, I'm going to fast forward.
Yes.
Because you're still teaching, just doing script union work,
Okay,
yeah,
right,
in North
Yes,
India.
yes.
And then you've have your family, but at some point, I mean, you went to Hebron School when you were younger. We haven't mentioned that yet, but
No.
that's where you were sent to school.
Yeah.
How did the invitation come for you to then come and take up the role as principal there?
Well, quite simply, they got to the bottom of the barrel.
They didn't know they were getting the best. But
They'd approached me earlier on, and I said, well, when you get to the bottom of the barrel, come and tell me. Maybe I'll consider it that time. Well, they had got to the bottom of the barrel, so they came to me and said, we feel you should at least consider it. And we prayed about it, and our kids had begun going there. Luke was already there as a youngster, and Ben was due to go. And we thought, well, okay, maybe this is a period of God. And we said yes. And they said yes.
May I just add one little piece there? That actually, when we were first approached for Hebron, we said no. And the reason we said no was because we did not want to identify with the missionary community. Mm-hmm. And we really saw the preciousness of not sort of being part of an expat community. So again, God had to take us right back and say, really? What if I actually want you to do this? Mm-hmm. And it was when the second letter came and Rod went for the interview. And as he went, we were in Pune, he went by train 2 days for the interview. At that time, I can remember being very prepared. And I often find that the scriptures, and I love reading every morning, early morning, just spending time reading the scriptures, and I ask the Lord, give me a word, give me a verse which is going to really solidify something. And when Rod came back, I'd already sensed God had given me a word about going to Hebron. And so when you said, actually, they're offering us this role, I kind of knew, yes, this is the right thing. So we were at Hebron for 8 years.
Okay, wow.
But we continued with a lot of contact because Rod was on the school council. We also, and then our children carried on at Hebron right up till 2013, when Andy left Hebron.
So tell us your perspective on boarding school, because I mean, it's such a difficult choice that people have to make on the field, you know, talking about the missionary community.
Yeah.
Because what are your options? You either do local school and then, you know, kids have a difficult time adjusting back home, or you do international school and you get rarefied in your kind of experience of life. I mean, not necessarily, but that can often be the result. Or boarding school, or homeschooling, or leaving the field entirely and going back. So tell us your perspective as to why you feel a boarding school like Hebron would have been a good choice. I mean,
it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because a lot of people have a lot of painful things and hurtful things, and so right at the outset now, I would say that if some of those memories are returning to whoever might be listening today, it's important to look at them, but also remember that you are looking at them as an adult. When I went back to my school in my boarding school, I went back as an adult and as a mother. And I remember thinking, how could my parents have ever sent me here? Because I was looking at it with a different view. And yet I knew that in actual fact, the other part of me was saying, I'd been very happy and I'd had great friends and I'd had lots of difficulties, but I've had good friends. So I think there's the both sides.
I think one of the things that is important is that I knew that it was as hard for my parents as it was for me, and that they We're not saying, okay, off to boarding school, so now we can do our work.
It's actually very easy for a child to pick up that message.
Oh yes, very easy. I mean, I can see some kids that were at Hebron, and they were really going through troubles, and I knew it was because their parents were really saying, well, okay, now we can get on with the real work, which is mission work. We've got our children safely up there. It's a good school. Leave them there. If our kids pick that up, that really they're trying to get rid of us as a problem, then there's endless issues which come from that, you know. So somehow or other, we've got to be able to convey. And I know that when I was at school with my brothers as a little boarder, I realised that my mum was crying, and she'd cry when we left and things like that. And I would sort of think to myself, why do we go then? And I'd realised that this was the best thing that was for me. And somehow or other, it's the way that the parents are able to convey to their kids, as we hope we conveyed it to ours, and whether we can convey it sufficiently to them that it's tough for us. And I know I made a deliberate choice very often to actually, our kids got into trouble because they were good kids and they loved getting into trouble. And I can remember several times just dropping everything and saying, I'm going back to Hebron to meet with my kids. I'm going there to be with my kids. And I've done it for several of them, when they've got themselves into deep water, I've dropped everything and gone.
I think that when people ask us this question, we often talk about flexi education. That if you've got the options out there, you've got boarding school, you maybe home ed, self-education, which
Works for some.
Yeah. And local schools. One size doesn't fit all. And I know our children, for different reasons, have had different types of education along the way. Again, Christina, if we're honest, I think looking back, there've been certain choices we made that we would not make again. For example, we sent Ben ahead of us from Pune to Hebron 6 months early. I would never do that now.
That was a big mistake.
That was a big mistake. And, there are certain things that I look back and I feel sometimes, why did we do that?
Same here.
Yeah.
And you regret it, and then you just simply have to say, Lord, have mercy, and the mercy, and then they make choices for their own children, and you see those choices, and of course some of them are going to be different because of the choices we make, and then they'll make other choices that their children will think, I'm not going to do that, and it can never, you can just get, but as long as we do the best we can, I think it's looking at the options, looking at as fairly as you can, recognizing in the end. Now, one choice we made when we were in one of the countries we were in where things got difficult politically, and we in the end had to leave. Against our will, we sent Andy to Hebron as a boarder earlier than we would have done. But because of the circumstances that happened later, it was so wonderful that he wasn't there in the country with us. God protected his life. And I think the ultimate thing is a family that has had a call of God on their life. It's not just the parents, it's the whole family. It's the children too. We do quite a bit of family life coaching, mission life coaching for the family, for the children as well. And as we talk through, we were doing one last week, and as we talk with the children, Rod took the little 10-year-old out and was working with some wood on the building site, chatting with him about his experiences. I think it's keeping communication lines open. And again, you look back and you think, you want to do that as well as you possibly can, but you don't always get that right. Yeah.
So going back to you as the principal of Hebron, what were you trying to achieve? What was the atmosphere that you were wanting to build for kids in that situation? Because, our experience was you would sit, I remember you, Rod, squatting down next to a kid who was struggling with something and just chatting. And you could see the bond. You could see the fact that they were relaxing and able. I remember thinking, that's the principle of the school. But I so appreciated the atmosphere that you sought to build.
I think the fact that, one, I'd been at boarding school, Ruthie had been at boarding school, our own kids have been at boarding school without us as parents there. We were very grateful to God that we were able to be there as a family, and when I took up the job of principal, our kids were still young and they were still all in the school there. And so it was a great privilege that we had. But having gone through it yourself, you realise, I think, what's happening, and therefore somehow you can identify with the kids better because you've been through that experience yourself, and you can identify.
You really do want to, as far as you possibly can, create safety and create also a family. Rod was accused of making Hebron like a Scripture Union camp.
What we also realised, and you did too, love, that it was much more important for the right people to be as boarding house parents rather than necessarily as teachers. The important thing is the kids had to have good boarding parents, and we were much more concerned about that, and choosing them carefully and trying to decide that's really much more important than who teaches them geography or who teaches them maths. It's much more important who's going to be with them out of school hours.
I think the other thing that we tried to really make very, very important was the accessibility for parents to spend as much time during term time with their children. So quite often, maybe a mother or a couple or a family would come up and live in Uti for an extended period of time, being on holiday from the place where they were, but have plenty of access to their children. Take the children, let them go and stay out of school. So Rod's another thing I remember, love, was that sometimes people pushed you to try and create a rule book, and you said, we're not going to run this place on rules, we're going to run it on principles.
Nice.
And that we should we understand then the decisions we make are on those principles. What are they? What are they of really love one another, understand one another? And we had staff meetings which was started every single week. Changed it from a Monday to a Thursday because a Thursday is a much more relaxed day than a Monday, and that's quite an interesting thing actually when you come to meetings. And so a Thursday night, and the first hour would be a little time in the Word, Bible study, or somebody share a thought, and then prayer. And I can see now all the staff on the floor together in groups, praying for the school, praying for the students, praying for staff families, for the parents of families.
And we always had that before the business time, because very often, you do the business and then you pray, which means that your mind is preoccupied with the business. We did it the other way around. We said the first thing we'll do is we will pray, and we will pray. Then at the end, we'll just do whatever business is necessary. The other thing we did was we created a lot of joint decision making. So I created there was no middle management at all. So I created a sort of middle management team where people could, the senior staff or the staff we chose, we had a boarding school, a boarding side of management. We had a academic side of management. We had a administrative side of management, so people could talk about things a lot more than just having an administrator or a dorm person, as it were, which really had to work on their own without really being able to talk through issues and talk through principles and discover what was the right way to do things and to be ready to change.
An interesting thing that we inherited when we went to the school, and I don't know whether that's still happening, is that every single staff member, from the principal to the simplest, early, recently trained person, got the same salary. There was no differentiation on them.
Okay.
And so every single job was valued.
It's valued.
You could move people around the school very easily without them feeling, oh, well, then that I won't get my salary. You get exactly the same, whether you're looking after the tiny kids or whether they're doing A-levels, or whether you're teaching or whether you're a dorm parent. Exactly the same allowance was given to all of us. And that was something which was a huge benefit for administrative moves. You could move people around without there being any sort of feeling, oh, I'm going to lose money or whatever.
But I think it meant it gives ethos of the school was to have a real sense of equality, a real sense of inclusion, and being able to understand that everyone is valuable. Yeah.
So after Hebron, you had quite an odyssey afterwards. So what do you want to say about what you did next? And
well, we knew that, I mean, we did 8 years at Hebron, and I think actually, to be honest, we've done things in 8-year periods until now when we're going on for 80. And after 8 years, we really sensed God was moving us on, and we rejoined Scripture Union to work in marriage and family work and adventure camping. And it was something that we just naturally moved into because God had taken us through a lot of experiences with dealing with parents having to and mission parents and other parents, Christian parents, who had to deal with their families. That's a family life stuff was something which was very clear, and Ruthie had got a tremendous heart for it. I knew that I was longing to see young people coming to know God in the open air. Open air education is something which I loved and I knew was right, and so starting Avalanche campsite in the Nilgiris was just a natural evolution out of Hebron, and praise God for those opportunities.
And we had this wonderful PAC team, our personal accountability and care team, which grew out of that experience, because there was one couple, an older couple, who were from our sending church in Hildenborough in Tunbridge, and they came to know, I think we wrote to them and said, we're wondering about what next after Hebron, and they simply said, we're getting the next flight, which was amazing. Such support. And they came, unbeknown to us, they were looking for a project to support. And so we began to share our heart, and Rod talked about this adventure centre which he'd love to start in the jungle, building the jungle, and I was talking about a family life centre, specifically mainly for Indian missionary families, because we knew that was a big gap. What could we do? And at the end of 10 days, they were with us for 10 days, and they said, do both and we'll underwrite it. And it was incredible. And that's another long story. But we also knew that we wanted it to be within and under an Indian mission. And so that's why both of those projects were put under Scripture Union India. So that's Cornerstone House in Mahabalipuram, which is still flourishing now.
Yeah, Chennai, right?
Near Chennai. And Avalanche campsite in Emerald out beyond Uti in the jungle there. And that was an incredible 2 years of adventure, starting from scratch. In Mahabalipuram there was just sand, nothing.
I remember.
The campsite had started, but the Cornerstone House, and in the jungle there was just trees and
and an elephant trail.
Yes, elephants came and ate the jam on one of the
By the way, we had something I think which kept us sane and sensible. Was we always had young people out from wherever, England or Australia or whatever, young people who just were leaving school or leaving college. So these young people, I mean, they brought a lot of interest because they also linked people with what was going on in the West, etc., and they were able to bring good influences, and we chose them carefully, and they would get involved with life as well, and so it was a great privilege really to have all these young people around us. Even though we were getting older in years, we had all these young people sort of milling around us and keeping us young.
Older in years. We were
Well, remember me, love.
So Right, well, time is marching on, so I think we need to try and move a little bit quicker through some of the next couple of decades. You were headhunted to be the principal of a well-known school in another Asian country. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that, and then what happened while you were there?
Well, that was a very great privilege, actually, to be asked to go and be principal at this school. Has a long history with CMS, and it was a great privilege, really, to be part of that institution for 4.5 years, and would have been happy to stay longer, but political situations meant that really we had to leave, and in fact we were deported from that place
for political reasons.
Political reasons, yes.
Right. So
I was just thinking that as we began, you talked earlier about moving on to different stages, and I can remember walking down the beach. Lots of significant things have happened to us on beaches. Mm-hmm. And walking down the beach at Mahabalipuram with Rod, when we began to feel we'd been 8 years in Cornerstone, seen it grown, seen a lot of couples trained in marriage ministry, written our book, Marriage Masala, and then Rod saw Avalanche Campsite and Camp Centre develop and grow and become really effective for the dream that you'd had earlier, for the vision, and see some wonderful staff, Indian staff, just taking it on, and all the time people able to take things on to a new level and a higher level than we could. And walking along the beach, I said to Rod, now what do you think, what would you love to do next? That's the other thing about being guided. I think you want to, actually God loves to know what we would love to do.
Go with your dreams. Yeah.
Go with your dreams. What would you love to do next? And Rod said, I would love to take up a school again, because he'd been principal of Hebron for nearly 9 years, and then I'd love to take up a school that was perhaps going through some tough times. I'd love to. Mm. Rod loves something that's difficult. Challenge.
And so this chance opened up. It was a really, as I said, it was a real great privilege to be there. And we did a lot of development in the school, and were able to bring in and introduce various things which were needed in the management. We set up again another management team which we didn't have before. So there was a lot of interaction, etc. I was able to get some excellent staff into some really key positions in that school, and it was a school that really had a very strong Christian foundation. It had a most beautiful chapel, and we had actually been asked to try and strengthen the Christian foundation of the school, and so that was a real challenge. But it was wonderful to be able to get some really fine staff who were coming along with us in seeking to build the tone and ethos of what the founders of the school had really wanted to be.
It was a large place, much larger than Hebron, 3,000 people.
Yes, yeah, very big school, and in many ways it was a total boys' school, all boys' school, and so it was again quite a big challenge.
So to have that come to an end very suddenly must have been tough.
It was disappointing in the sense because, we had a lot of plans and so on, and we were putting them in place, especially at that stage. A lot of computerization was coming into being. It was a big challenge, and I was looking forward to that. So it was disappointing to have to move out because of political shenanigans, etc. We found ourselves booted out, and nice and firmly booted out.
You're not alone in being falsely accused and potentially in grave danger.
Yes.
The course of fulfilling the job that you were given. So what advice would you give to anybody else who...
I was thinking, although Rod can always put a very positive, it was a hard time, it was a frightening time, and we were glad that, as I said, that Andy was actually not there at that time, our youngest son. But we had an immense, and this is probably one of the major things we'd say, we had a wonderful group of incredible friends, local friends who, in different ways, were genuinely caring for us, for our well-being, from all different types of backgrounds. But we had a particular...
Yes, we had one couple, and he was a delightful man. He'd been a manager of a tea estate, and he understood management really well. A lovely, lovely, believing person from that country. And he was probably one of our closest friends, certainly as far as I was concerned. I always loved when he used to just breeze past the office doing some work in the town and just spend a few moments. And before he went, he'd always just pray for me. But in particular, he would ring me up early morning and he would say, "Rod, I want to pray for you. Is there anything specific you want us to pray for?" And I would tell him one or two things, etc. Okay. And I'd know that man would just, because he was so much part of he was an old boy of the school, so he knew exactly the sort of things that were going on and the undercurrents, etc., that were going on in the society around and so on. He was so much part of that local
and
society.
That's probably when there was a point where I was sent a death threat letter, because it was quite an intense time and it was very frightening. And I saw the beginning of the letter, I screwed it up, and this was interesting because Rod then came into the room and I said, "Look at this." He read it, he got for the first 2 or 3 lines, and then he stopped, and then he just literally put his hand on my shoulder and he prayed in the name of Jesus that the opportunity for Satan to put in the spirit of fear would be cut. That was one of the ways in which I feel we were helped through that period of time. But this particular couple was so prayerful that the night when I had the death threat letter, we couldn't sleep and we were wondering whether we should leave immediately. And eventually at 1 o'clock in the morning, we dropped to sleep. We were in a large house and it was a frightening night. And all of a sudden we just dropped to sleep. And then we woke up to a telephone call at 7. And it was this dear friend. And he said, "Rod, what happened to you last night?" He said, "At 1 o'clock in the morning, I was woken up and I thought I'd been shot. And I put my hand to my head because I thought that I would see blood." He was quite a dramatic person. And he said, "God spoke to me and said, get up, wake your wife, and pray for Rod and Ruthie until the morning." And so we had that type of friendship, those type of friends, others who came in and packed our things, others who gave us minute by minute, literally advice. So when we had to leave without anyone knowing where we were going, apart from our son and his wife, his fiance, it was really amazing having people like that. Because we weren't able to talk about it or even send messages beyond the country.
So we had these kind of friends, but also, remarkably, we had angel visits. We were standing in the queue to leave, and we were fearful that the military or whatever would stop us and arrest us before we got onto the plane to leave, because we'd been dismissed from the country, and so we knew we had to leave, and we'd been given just a few days. So we were down at the airport, and we'd been told by this wise pastor, book 3 flights and don't tell anybody which one you're going on. So we'd done all that, and we were going on this flight. It was a Kuwait Airways flight. For whatever reason, the flight was delayed. We contacted the office, and a gentleman came and helped us, and he helped us check all the baggage in, and then told us just to go in the line and go through. And so we were in this line, and then as we were waiting in the line, we saw him across the way, and he just beckoned to us. There was another desk a bit further over for VIPs or whatever. So he beckoned us over. We went there, and the lady, we put our passports in. He checked us through, and I was afraid to begin to say, unwanted foreigner, no entry again. and our son was there, and we wanted to come back to that country again and again. We had no issues with the country at all. It was just these political shenanigans that were at work. So this man checked us through and signed us out without any indication on our passports that we couldn't go back again. And we just stood and looked, and we turned round to thank him, and he'd gone.
It was literally 2 or 3 seconds.
And we knew
and he and
was
the woman,
a personification of an angel. He really was incredible. We don't know where he is now, but thank goodness for that angel. And we had several of these sort of experiences again when we were standing in line to go through that same day to go through onto the airport. We saw a security man, and he was looking at us, and we thought, uh-oh. And he went to a telephone, and he lifted the telephone, and we thought, he's reporting us. He spotted us, that security man. He's calling the security people. He put the phone down, and he came up to us, and I tried not to look at him. And he said, "Sir, my son is in your school. Can I help you? Come." And he took us right to the front of the queue, and he said, "I'll try and get you upgraded." So he tried to get us upgraded. He couldn't get us upgraded, but he got us. He came back and he said, "Sir, I've got 2 seats for you in a private part of the plane. We're very sorry what has happened to you. We're very sorry." Another angel, which was the parent.
That was a human angel.
A human angel. Well, they were all humans, but they were angelic people sent just basically to encourage us.
But you know, it was. I was thinking as we arrived you were asking us how did we cope with this. We arrived at Heathrow, and the very first thing we found ourselves whispering. Our children had arrived, and we found ourselves not able to speak, and we all of a sudden, Rod said to me, "It's all right, we're in England." And it took a while to get through that trauma. And one of the things that helped us very, very much was a dear friend who lent us a flat. And he said, "Have this flat for 4 nights and just talk to each other." Very wise, very wise. And we sat there and we did what we advise a lot of when we're doing mission life coaching now. We said, we wrote what we call a 49er. And a 49er is simply called that because we wrote down everything on our mind. And we wrote it in bullet points, hard, with pen and paper. And we put down things that we were worried about, things that people we wanted to contact, events that were troubling us that we'd like to talk through, and various things, but we listed it. And it took us probably a year or more to be able to tick things off.
And there were 49 points on that.
49 points, which is why we often talk about make a 49 to decompress, to actually get it out there.
Yeah.
That really helped. We have our marvellous PAC team,
Right.
our personal accountability and care team, and do you know what they did? They sat and they wept with us. We sat in the garden and they wept and we wept. And I did that again with our precious daughter-in-law, Kirti. They'd been through trauma with the earthquake. We'd been through trauma with deportation. And I remember very clearly Kirti saying, I said to her, "Do you want to talk about some of these things?" And she said, "If I talk, I'll cry." And I said, "If I talk, I'll cry." So we went to a little tea shop in Tunbridge Wells, and we sat and we talked and we cried. And do you know that tea shop stayed open an extra hour and just brought us tea? And we cried.
Amazing.
And I think the healing of tears, Christine, is very often underestimated. Jesus said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted."
Yeah.
And so when we look back on our life, we can see things that we have mourned over, but we've also been comforted.
Yeah.
So, but the tears, you've seen our tears. The tears are there.
You've talked a lot, actually, obliquely, but specifically now. Can you tell us about the PAC team? And this is the book that we wrote together about the PAC team. And actually, you tell the story about deportation in there and how the PAC team, they brought you stuff and they brought you listening ears and just let you unpack it all. So tell us about the book and why you felt it was important to write it.
Yes, I think because we didn't have, as it were, a sort of sending mission, a sending body. We needed people who were just friends to stand with us. And so, guided by this wonderful couple who came out to India to help us make decisions about leaving Hebron and so on, guided by them, we chose 8 different people, most of them couples, that we knew, and they were not connected at all to any kind of mission necessarily or any other body, but people who were our friends, who knew us, really good friends. We asked them if they would join together with us and just be, to whom we could be accountable. Because we wanted to be personally accountable for our life together as a family, our marriage and our family and what we were doing.
So it wasn't so much, I think that our PAC team is more concerned about who we are and being accountable, being vulnerable, being able to share some of our, the real stuff that goes on in our lives as well as what we're doing. So it's not so much about what we're doing, it's what we're being. And to be able to say, look, you challenge us, you tell us when you think so we're getting off track. And they do. And they still do. And we meet out in the field here in Kings North, in Kings Mill, and we meet and they challenge us and they advise, but then prophetically. So just the other day we had a WhatsApp message which was just so spot on for the moment. So we're very, very grateful. I think Priscilla and John Horn, Priscilla, she was the one who first gave us the understanding. We were walking through the market in Uti at this time when we were talking about our future, and she was looking at a man who was carrying vegetables on his head in a basket, and she said, that's what I want John and I to be for you. We want to carry your load so that you're hands-free. And that's the picture of being hands-free. And we found many times
it was as if we could take the stuff that was worried about and dump it in the basket, and our PAC team would say, okay, we'll carry this for you, we'll pray through these issues for you, you don't have to carry them, you get on with what you know you're meant to be doing, but we'll carry the burden concept or the joy concept about it. We'll carry that burden, and then we'll pray that through for you. And that's been a fantastic
we could give you many examples, but we know time is short, but we could give you examples of how specific that's been, and how words, pictures, scriptures, prophecies have just come right in. And also because they're a small group, 7 to 9, we've made ourselves extremely vulnerable to them, and we love that. We're very grateful, and it's been...
Well, you shared the concept with us, and we've taken it on. So lots, and then we wrote this book together. Actually, we just had a small contribution to make, but
yes.
So the concept has taken off for a lot of people, hasn't it? And we still get people saying, "Tell us how to build a PAC team." So
yes, we were talking with a couple just recently at All Nations, funnily enough, and they said that their PAC team has saved their lives in South America. So that's really wonderful.
Yeah. Talk about what happened after you were deported and where you went next, because I think that led to what you're doing now, isn't it? The sort of the time that you had in Hong Kong.
Yes. Well, we came back from being deported, and we were waiting really on God to show us. But we did a lot of writing at that time.
We walked along the beach, and we felt go back to Kings North and renovate the barn. And we came back here, and we looked at the old barn. This place in Kings North in England is is a homestead of about 6 or 7 different wonderful ramshackle buildings and homes, and we have loved it because it's been in the family for 100 years. Rod's grandfather bought this place. Anyway, we felt we should, well, God was saying renovate the barn, but we looked at it, and I remember looking at it and thinking, we've got this wrong. No thanks, can't do that, far too small. So we said no, we won't do that. And then the opportunity, the invitation came to go to Hong Kong.
Came to go to Hong Kong as really the pastoral couple for a retreat centre on Chung Chau Island. Beautiful place, totally new experience for us. You know, we've been to Asia, but we had never been to this part of Asia before, and we just enjoyed it so much. We were there for 2.5 years or so, and then came back to the UK, and Ruthie took one look at the barn and said, oh, yes, we can make this into a home. We've lived in tiny little homes in Hong Kong, literally, you know, the size of a shoebox. We can make this into a home. And so sure enough, we did. So that's how Kingsmill began, really.
And then we began to realise, actually, God's intention is greater than what we thought. We thought we were just going to convert the barn and then we were going to go back probably to India. And then God gave us a word, which was wide open spaces. And it comes from Romans 5 in the Message, which says, I take you into the wide open spaces of God's grace and glory, standing tall and shouting praise. See if you can't round up enough containers to fill all that I'm going to give you. And it was just that concept of, wow, wide open spaces, who's it for? And so Rod and the family and friends renovated the barn. That took us about 4 months, and into 2013, and then we realized that God was bringing people, especially couples who were going through tough times. And so we started to have in a sense that this was more than just a base for our family. This was a place of transition, a place of recovery, a place really, and he took us into that scripture of, you know, really the widow, the orphan, the outcast and the stranger, and the prisoner. And that's extended into members of our own family, Ben and Shiani, Luke and Kirti, being here to the extent that and they're not just here, but they have taken on in remarkable ways and in different ways to us, but being able to enable this whole stage of Kingsmill to happen, and to see our little granddaughter Mimi, Elora and Malachi running around on the same grass that Rod was running around on. This is the 5th generation to be able to enjoy, and the rest of our grandchildren. Elijah, Caleb and Feifei. Elijah comes round, plays basketball just outside our window, and I think he's the 5th generation to be here. And yet God has sent us in mission, and Rod's parents too, from here all over the world. And yet there is a sense of perhaps homing pigeons, I don't know. But,
and he's still sending
out now. And we have a sense that God is, you know, actually doing a bit of a shaking and a stirring right now in Kingsmill and sending people out, which is amazing. Our family, and bringing in the stranger. We have young asylum seekers living here. We have people who go through tough times in their family. We have people who've recently been in prison and able to gain restoration here. So it's not in a big scale. It's stopping for the one, as Heidi Baker says so beautifully. Stopping for the one, but it's a great place to live, even though it leaks in the rain.
Well, I've enjoyed coming here and enjoying the hospitality too. So, tell us then about the other books that you've written. I've got a couple here.
Yes.
Marriage masala you've already mentioned.
Yes.
So quickly tell us about that.
52 spices for a healthy marriage. And we recommend just enjoying, if you like chicken tikka masala, then you might like this book. Practical, doable, easy.
One for
spices.
each week in a year.
That's right.
Yes.
Just practical spices, things you can apply.
Yes.
Nothing complicated.
The concept is really, you imagine yourself, you're a man, you're busy, you've got lots of things on your mind, and you think, but I'm going home. And there's something nice there for me at home, and that's my wife. So think of your favourite dish. Okay, go home for your favourite dish. That's the masala. That's the masala that's waiting for you. And enjoy that favourite dish when you get home. I mean, that's the concept behind it, if you like. So 52, one for every week of the year, essentially.
That story comes from just as an aside, comes from a lovely couple, Indian couple doctors. They said, if you can go home for your biryani, you won't be tempted with anything outside. but the concept really is the spices to add to your flavour.
Yeah.
Every Indian family has their own unique spice flavour.
Mm-hmm.
Which is different to anyone else's. And so the idea is that we offer these spices and then you take them and you mix them for your own family.
Yeah.
So what might taste good to you doesn't taste good to somebody else. So you want to choose. So in areas of communication and in all the general areas that we all need to work on all the time. We sometimes pick up our book and we say, hey, that would be a good idea. Let's do that.
Okay, and then there's Family Faluda. So what's the concept behind that?
Well, Family Faluda, we wrote along with Luke and Kirti and really appreciate that. And all the drawings inside Family Faluda are actually done by Luke. And that is the first 10 years of being a family. And so it's practical ideas. It's particularly written, I guess, for the Asian context, but possibly is valuable for any family in any context. It's just fun ideas.
Okay.
It's sort of things that you can do yourself with your family wherever you are. You don't have to have
Without
specialist
expense.
stuff. You don't have to have expensive toys. You can just make do with the things that you've got. You make a faluda, which is a marvellous drink of a mixture of all different sort of fruits, etc. And you make that something tasty for your family.
The concept is it's not a smoothie. Because a family that's a smoothie is all blended together and it's all mixture. A faluda has its own individual tastes. So you get perhaps the strawberries and the ice cream and the rose water and all these different flavours. And as in a family, a healthy family, we can all be different.
Mm-hmm.
But enjoy being together.
Fabulous. Listen, there's been so much here. It's such a rich heritage that you both have in your own histories and also that you've brought to the world through your own family and your ministries. So thank you. And
well, thank you.
Thank you so much. I mean, we have so much that we share in terms of history as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
we do.
But it's been lovely to hear your perspectives and hear your history. Well, thank you very much for watching, and do promote this, pass it on, let other people know about the story, and thank you very much for your time. God bless you. Bye-bye.